Chad's army says that the country's president, Idriss Deby, has died just a day after he won elections, securing him a sixth term in office. Troops have been deployed to the streets of the capital, N'Djamena. Air and land borders are closed until further notice, and a curfew is in place. Deby was reportedly killed as he led his troops in a frontline battle against rebels in the north of the country. Deby's son has been named as interim head of state, but the rebels have rejected that transition and are vowing to march on the capital.
Residents of Chad reacted with disbelief to the televised announcement of President Idriss Deby's death.
Marshal of Chad, Idriss Deby Itno, as he did every time when the Republic's institutions were seriously threatened, took the heroic lead in a combat operation against terrorists who had come from Libya. He was injured in the engagement and died after being brought back to N'Djamena.
The news came just hours after he was declared the winner of the country's presidential election on April 11th. It would have been the long-term leader's sixth term in office. It's sad news. The presidential election took place calmly. And just a day after they announced his win, they announced his death. This news is very surprising. On a human level, it is touching. But there are rumors that the information disseminated by the Transition Council is false. It is not known why Deby would have visited the front line or participated in the clashes. The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, and some observers question the military's narrative. Following the announcement, a military council deployed the army around the capital and imposed a curfew. It also dissolved the country's government and parliament and named Deby's 38-year-old son as transitional leader. He heads the elite presidential guard that oversaw his father's security. Deby was among the world's longest-serving leaders. The herder's son took the classic path to power through the army. In 1990, his rebel forces overthrew the then-president in a coup. During his 30-year rule, he became a key ally of the West and supplied weaponry and soldiers to the anti-jihadist campaign in the Sahel region. His unexpected death could spell the beginning of a new period of uncertainty in a deeply troubled region.
Let's bring in Reid Brody here. He's counsel and spokesperson for Human Rights Watch and joined us from Barcelona. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Brody. First of all, Idriss Deby ruled Chad for more than 3 decades. How would you describe his legacy?
Well, I would say charitably, it's a mixed legacy. Of course, Idriss Deby came to power by defeating his predecessor, Hissène Habré, who was probably certainly the most brutal of Chad's leaders, who committed crimes against humanity and who was recently convicted, actually, by a court in Senegal for massive crimes, including sexual slavery, murder, torture. And Idriss Deby came in promising Chadians liberty. And he established a truth commission, one of the first in Africa, to look at the crimes of his predecessor. But it soon became very clear that he was going to use the same tactics. And he brought back many of Habré's people, and he became more and more autocratic. I mean, he never reached that level of brutality, and he always maintained a semblance of constitutional rule. There were elections, there were opposition parties, there was opposition press. But these elections more and more became mere formalities, and there was human rights abuses, arbitrary detention, and probably most of all corruption. During Idriss Deby's time in power, oil was discovered in the south of Chad and began to flow through Cameroon, but that oil money was used to support the elite of his country.
Okay, what do you expect to happen in Chad now with the death of its leader? He'd been in place for 3 decades, as we mentioned. What are the prospects for achieving stability in Chad at this point?
Well, of course, that's the thing that Chad offered, was stability. I mean, this is a very volatile region. You've got Libya falling apart above Chad. You've got Sudan, which broke in half. You've got a war in Central African Republic. You've got Boko Haram in Nigeria. So what Idriss Deby offered was stability. And that's why for 3 decades, the West supported Idriss Deby, just as they had supported Hissan Habre before him. I think now we don't know. I mean, I'm very worried today for the situation in Chad itself. I mean, on the one hand, the rebels, I don't think that will happen, but the rebels could win, and they could be worse than Deby. Many of them are tied to Hissan Habre. They come from his small ethnic group, and they could start taking revenge on Idriss Deby's ethnic group, the Sahel. And also, the other possibility is that the government will take advantage of this chaos, as they did in 2008 when rebels marched into Jamena and were turned back, take advantage of this situation to attack and disappear political opponents. So it's a very scary period right now inside of Chad.
Mr. Brody, thank you very much for your insights. That was Reed Brody, counsel and spokesperson for Human Rights Watch.
You're welcome.